Thanks for having me. My name is Robert. I'm, as Peter said, author of the book, the CLI book. The reason why I wrote that book is I contributed, I think, almost 2 years to NPM and was really into the topic of writing really good command line clients. And I found out that it's a really, really huge topic with a lot of small nitty-gritty details and also some basic things you have to take care of when you want to design a really good interface for your users when you design a command line client. And basically that's it from me for now. I want to answer one question that immediately jumps into my eyes before I start the talk, which is there a recommended experience level with Node.js? And that's a really great question. And in my opinion, Node.js is suitable for all kinds of experience levels. Especially, it's very suitable for beginners too, because the community, the JavaScript and Node.js community, is such a welcoming, nice crowd, and there's a lot of material out there on the web. If you are subscribed to Peter's newsletter, you are getting a lot of very good tutorials. Every week he is collecting and sending out to the subscribers. So in my opinion, Node.js is very suitable for beginners, but it's also super suitable for very expert users that want to solve very complicated problems.
Awesome. So I guess you're going to get this going working.
Okay. I just pasted a link to Node School into the chat. Node School is also a great resource to learn Node.js together with mentors. And it's happening all over the world. And if you are interested, just take a look after my talk. Yeah. So my talk is titled CLI Love. As I already said, my name is Robert Kowalski. And doing my work on NPM for almost 2 years, I was quite interested in the question, what makes a really good command line client, which is very easy to use and which is a lot of fun to use, and why are some command line clients not very well to use and sometimes quite frustrating to use. And I was even so obsessed from writing really good command line interfaces that I wrote a book called the CLI book. You can get it at clibook.com, and the book has 2 parts. The first part is about what makes a really good command line client, which is also the topic of my talk today. And the second part is really a hands-on where we build a command line client with Node in year 6. And many popular projects have their own command line clients. Apache CouchDB recently got Nemo, and most of us know Linux, the Linux project, which has Git as a popular command line client. They all have a certain purpose, and today I want to take a look with you what makes them so successful and so great. And many people ask me why I didn't write Nemo, which is the command line client for managing CouchDB clusters, in another language like Erlang. And in my opinion, Node.js is quite is the perfect platform for writing command line interfaces. It has a really, really huge ecosystem with modules in every flavor. It's fun to write JavaScript, and the development speed is super fast. And during my research, I found that there are a lot very good discussions on the web how to build good APIs, especially around the topic of REST and RESTfulness. But there wasn't almost no discussion how to build a really good command line interface. So what makes a good command line interface? At first, we have to realize that for a command line interface, the keyboard is the main interface of the user. Usually, but not often, a human is using the command line interface, and that's also the reason why you definitely want to use easy to recognize commands. Let's take a look at my example here, which is, in my opinion, a very bad example of a command line client, of a bad command line client. I have to enter very cryptic commands, and I'm also getting an even more cryptic error message back. To be honest, I have no idea what I have to do now to get my job done. So what makes a good command line interface? And in my opinion, there are three main principles. You never get stuck, it's simple, and it supports power users, and you can use it for all the things. A good command line client is successful when the users are successful. That sounds easy, but is often not the case. Let's take a look at the first principle. You never get stuck. To explain that in some more detail, let's take a look at a traffic jam. Who enjoys staying in traffic and not getting to the right target destination they want to get to? Usually, nobody does. And that's also the same with developers. They really get unhappy when the tools they want to use are standing in the way and they don't get their job done. So what means you never get stuck? Well, it means the user has always a possibility to get their task done, to get their actual job done. And the permanent goal of our tool should be to reduce all friction involved in that process. And that's me, where I'm trying to use Git. And I'm entering the wrong comment. And Git says to me, hey Robert, git pull is not a proper Git command, but you can see all the Git commands available with git --help. And by the way, did you mean git pull? And in that situation, I'm able to use that error message and get my job done. Same for npm. In that example, I'm putting garbage into npm. And then npm says, hey Robert, that's not a valid comment, but here's a list of all the comments available. And if you need more detailed help on them, just type npm, the command, and then -h. And again, I'm not stuck in the process. What happens when I still need help? When I'm still searching for help in my Linux or Unix system? And it turns out Unix has a very popular way to ship documentation, which is man pages. And that screen is showing the man page for npm publish. The great thing about man pages is that you don't need internet, and you can use them in the same terminal window as you are using your command line client. That reduces context switches for the user. Git also offers man pages as a manual. And some users don't like man pages. They don't know that they exist, or they just don't like to use them. So most popular projects also offer a web-based version of their documentation. And it turns out that the projects are using a neat trick to write documentation once. They have one source for the documentation, and then they generate the web page and the man pages from that source. If you take a closer look at the man page for Git pull, and then at the website, you'll see that the content for the Git pull for the help to that command is just framed into a sidebar with a logo for the Git project, and then a little bit of CSS styling is applied. And that's also true for npm. Here's the npm publish command in the man page version. And the website version has a sidebar, some styling, but uses the same content. To make that happen, there's a really nice project available for Node.js developers with Marked and Markman. You can write your documentation once in Markdown, and then compile it to different output sources. But sometimes things go horribly wrong. Let's take a look again at my example for a very bad command line client. In this example, I'm getting a really cryptic stack trace. And even as an experienced Node.js user, I have to look twice what's happening here. And we have to remember, not everyone is a daily Node.js user. And it's also not clear without taking a look at the code and really debugging that program if it's a usage error or if it's a bug in the program. It's not clear to me if I just used the program in a wrong way, or if it is crashing because there's an error which was released with the last release. And again, the users are frustrated. Because of that, we added something like called usage errors to Nemo. And in case you're using a command in a wrong way, it immediately helps you to use the command in the right way. And of course, Nemo also has stack traces when it's crashing. What we are doing additionally to printing the stack trace is that we are adding the current Nemo version and the current Node.js version. And then we are encouraging the user to open an issue, including the current log at the Nemo repository. And users are making use of that. Here you can see Jan, who's submitting an error which happened with a production release of Nemo. And even in the worst case, the user isn't stuck. At least they get help in our issue tracker. And there's one nice additional thing about that. People, maintainers and users, you can ask the user when the bug happens and the program crashes, you can ask them to include everything you need to solve the bug in time already in the bug report. And because of that, you can solve the bug very fast and don't have to ask multiple times for different things like logs or output. The second principle is about power users. Power users are super important to a project. They are the ones which use the program multiple times a day, and they are also the ones which go to meetups or are doing a webcast to talk about their favorite project. So it's a good idea to support power users. And as I already said, power users are using your program probably multiple times a day. So shortcuts are an easy way to make their lives a lot easier. So for example, npm-i is the equivalent to npm install. And when you want to implement shortcuts for your commands, you probably want to use something to pass the arguments. And it turns out it was quite a fad in the Node.js community to write your own argument passing library a few years ago. So please don't write your own argument passing library. There are a lot of world-class modules for it out there. They are really good and support all different kinds of nice features. Hopefully at some day people love your command line client and they are using it a lot. And that means they start to use it in creative ways. Suddenly, not just humans are using your command line client anymore. Maybe they start to run it as a part of their deployment pipeline on a Jenkins, or they use it in a completely different way. And to support those cases, it's a good idea to support scripting. There are three subtopics here, which are exit codes, JSON output, and something what I call the API and the CLI. So Unix has different exit codes, and when a command was entered successful and run successfully, you get back the code 0. If you get back the code 1, it means that there happened a general error. And there are a lot of other different error codes to specify in more finer detail what error happened exactly. There's, for example, one for bad file permissions. And in my example here, I'm trying to use Git again, and I'm getting that nice help from Git, how I can see a list of all commands, and if I was meaning git pull instead. And what Git also does is it returns me the exit code 1 for general error. So when I would wrap that command in, for example, a bash script, I could handle that error now and react accordingly. JSON output is really powerful. We added it in Nemo for almost all commands available. With output in a machine-readable format, printing to the standard out of the console, the user is possible to use the programming language of their choice for handling the output. So for example, if someone is using Nemo but prefers Python instead, they could just spawn it in a child process in their Python script, get the output from standard out, and then process the output in Python because it's JSON. So that enables the users to handle to script with your program in basically every programming language that supports JSON. There's also something called what I call the API of the CLI. NPM supports that. It's not documented anymore. With the API of the CLI, you can do things like here in my example. I'm requiring the NPM module here, and then NPM exposes all available commands on the command line on the property commands. And that way I have a very, very powerful way to write scripts, but it also has a downside because I'm limited to the current platform used. In our case, it's JavaScript and Node.js. As power users are using your program probably multiple times a day, there will be the case that they want to have some feature always enabled. And sometimes maybe once a day or every 3 days, they want to change or disable it. NPM has a very powerful way to support command line arguments, which is a really good example how we can do that with our own command line clients. In that case, I'm installing happy here, but I want to define a custom registry, and NPM installs that from my custom registry. What I can do additionally is to set a permanent new custom registry, and NPM writes that into a config file. And the next time I'm installing happy, I don't need to specify a custom registry as an argument. It just uses my custom registry right away. But in case I want to use a completely different registry, I can just override the value from the configuration file with the argument I passed. And that means we have different priorities between configurations and arguments directly passed on the command line, and that combination is really, really powerful. There are two configuration modules I want to mention briefly that make working with configuration a lot easier. Those are RC and ini. And we are almost at the end now. The third principle, you can use it for all the things. Sounds easy at first, but if you take a closer look, it isn't that easy. So the idea is whenever I have to do something manually, I just add it to my command line client. And that's really a win-win situation because I'm solving a task for me, which makes my daily life easier. I don't have to do that monkey task anymore. And it also solves a problem for my users. And they are also really happy, getting more excited about the command line client I'm building. The problem is, especially in large teams and after a certain time working on a certain project, that you suffer a bit of organizational blindness after some times. time. So it gets really, really hard to see tasks that are easy to automate and would fit into the command line client, just as you don't really see them anymore. Here's again the list of modules I recommended during my talk. And basically that's almost it. I'm looking forward to the questions now. If you are interested in building command line clients with Node.js, take a look at the book. And that's it from me with the talk.
Wow, fantastic. That was excellent. There you go. You've turned your own screen sharing off. That's great. Right. So yeah, thanks for doing that. There's going to be people here that have got questions for you that they'll put in the chat or on the left-hand side. But I already noticed there are 4 different ones. So I'm going to let you just kind of pick at these as you wish, and yeah, see where we go. But so we'll probably sort of do 10 minutes or so of just Q&A. But if anyone else has got anything else to add, just put it in the system that's on the left-hand side. But we'll work through what we can. So where do you want to begin?
Okay. So I would just start with what are some good testing patterns, particularly with interactive tools. And so there's one way to test so there are 2 types of tests you can do, like unit tests and integration tests. And for integration tests and command line clients, it usually ends up with something like spawning the command line client in child process and test, then listening to the stream of output that is coming back from the command line interface, and then making your assertion if everything went accordingly. That is the thing that's, I think, most the biggest difference to test command line tools in comparison to websites or REST APIs, I would say.
Cool. So where do you want to go next?
Is there a recommended experience level with Node.js? Yeah,
everyone can do it. Everyone can do it.
Yeah.
Although we can't say it's easy, because as you've shown, it's not always straightforward, some of these ideas and patterns. But I guess anyone can at least make a very simple CLI tool. It's just a case of learning how to do all of these other things to make it actually nice to use.
Yeah, the community is also very welcoming, and there's a lot good learning material on the web. So I want to mention Peter's newsletter again, and also the awesome Node School events where you show up at a certain time, at a certain date, usually the weekend at some location, and you don't even need to know any JavaScript, and just learn together with others and awesome mentors who are investing a lot of time into the project.
Yeah, just chip away at it bit by bit, and you'll get there in the end. So I guess the next question actually is already a topic that you've covered.
Yeah, that's true. Regarding the how to design a user login or user info security module, I would say it's quite similar to a usual login pattern for a web application. So one popular pattern is you send the username and password to an endpoint, maybe you get an additional two-factor authorization challenge, and then you you get back a token. On websites, it's usually a session token, and for command line interfaces, you would probably also want to use a token. What you have to take care of is that your token doesn't leak into the stack traces. That also applies to web applications. So yeah, that's hopefully that helps as an answer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hang on, you got a new question now as well, a fresh one.
Oh wow. Oh, I'm just reading the question out loud for the people that watch the video later. Are there particular modules you recommend for helping to manage interactivity with command line interfaces? Or do you tend to provide your own logic for this case? I'm happy to use anything what's already there, and so the npm init dialog is written with a module called promzart. I write down in the chat. So that is one module I would recommend for manage interactivity like question and answer patterns with command line interfaces. And coming back to the previous question, you could also use that to design a login with password, a username, password, and you could even use that for two-factor auth later on. One question from the chat is there: is there a particular pain you've experienced using Node for development of command line interfaces over other languages and tools? I would say error handling is hard in Node.js. That's one particular pain that I've experienced using Node.js. There are certain ways to solve that, but it's something that pops up every once in a while, which is something where it would also be nice to have something maybe more near in the Node.js core to solve that problem. There's Brandon asked, do you mean error handling from other processes or handling the errors itself inside the command line client itself? Both. But especially like an exception handling in your actual code and handling those. So there are multiple patterns. One is, for example, the one we are using in the book is to have a global event listener which listens for in the process if an error happened, and then decides based on the type of the error what error message is shown to the user or what else should be happening.
So yeah, I think we've sort of. Actually, there's another couple of questions. Although I guess one of them is quite generic, asking, are there things that Node.js isn't good for? Which I guess you mentioned the error handling, but yeah. I mean, in terms of like large overall tasks, obviously,
Yeah, CPU intensive tasks. Like I wouldn't do image processing of large images in one Node.js process, because while I'm processing that image, it basically blocks my whole application, and that's not good.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously Node is quite particular in terms of, don't do anything that's like super high memory usage, because it's just not, V8 is just not cut out for that. Like, it can do some of it and you can spread stuff across processes, but it's not designed to like take up many gigabytes of RAM to do long, intensive processes or anything like that. So
yeah,
but generally, like if anyone is asking that question, like beginning or they're learning how to develop stuff, then you kind of can use Node for almost anything. If you're at that level, it's worth using a single language just to get up to speed with actually programming rather than learning lots of different languages. At least that's my opinion anyway, but I guess that's more a general programming query. There's another question. Is there any way to log the errors like node debug log into a log file, I'm guessing?
Yeah, so there's, for example, there are multiple logging modules for Node.js. One is Winston, and the other is the logger npm uses, and those can buffer the error, and then if buffer the log output. And when an error happens and the process is crashing, and you define that global error hook I just mentioned briefly, you can then also use the callback in that hook to take all the buffered stuff from your logger and then write it to disk before the program exits, hopefully with a proper exit code.
Awesome. Right, in that case, I think we should wrap it up here because, we've covered all of our different questions, and I need to go and calm down some rather screamy children. But these are the things you do every evening. I know actually it's quite late for you as well because you're in Central Europe, which I didn't realise. But we're coming up to 9 o'clock there soon, I think, won't it? So
Yes.
thanks to everyone for attending as well. It's always really great to see everyone come out and ask questions and all that type of thing. So, and obviously, thank you to anyone who's going to end up watching this on YouTube because we appreciate you just as much as well. So, that's awesome. So, is there anything you want to add? Obviously, we'll say everyone go and check out Rob's book. I guess is a good one. But is there anything you want to add? People want to follow you on Twitter or anything like that? You want to recommend?
I'm Robinson K on Twitter. Feel free to follow me. I'm also happy to answer any questions. Just ping me on Twitter. Thanks for having me. You are all awesome. Enjoy your evening, Peter, and all the best from Hamburg.
Awesome. Thank you very much. See you, folks. Thank you very much, Robert.
Thank you. See you.